here with me, and Ron Howard will also be here for the hydromet. Next briefing will be in 2 weeks on the 7th at 11 a.m. And we've reached a little bit beyond the midpoint of meteorological winter. But on the calendar, of course, Super Groundhog Day is midwinter. And we've also climatologically reached the coldest week of the year normally this week here. Moving ahead on the slides, showing you a MODIS image of about a week ago when we lost most of the snow cover in southern New England, southern New York, central New York, western New York. From the big warm-up we've had, we had almost a 10-day above normal temperature swing in the last 2 weeks, followed by this cold spell. And on this map here yesterday on the satellite image, you can see the storm that went offshore after the Arctic cold front, and we're starting to lock all the river basins up with ice again. We do have one little area here in southeast New York, north of course of the city, that very little snow on the ground. But as you can see here in the middle of this image, ice on the Hudson, and the ice was so prevalent that it actually stopped some of the construction operations on the new Tappan Zee Bridge. So the whole area is iced up, except of course for the deep parts of Lake Champlain, the deep Finger Lakes, Lake Sebago. Quite a bit of ice reforming on a lot of our rivers and lakes. And if you go to the Co-Regions Research Lab Ice Jam database, you can see a lot of the breakup jams that they're continuing to monitor. And during some of the peak ice jam flooding we had a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, there was 31 different reported on this page. So here you can also look at breakup releases, freeze-up jams releasing and still being monitored on their website. Speaking of ice, I looked at the Great Lakes Environmental Research Lab ice maps, and the medium ice concentration for Erie and Lake Ontario this week, based on the last 30 years of record, shows that Erie this time of year is still open, and quite a bit of Ontario is open. The reason why we're looking at these is on this map here, you'll see 100% of Erie is now iced up, and about 25% of Ontario. And what this is going to do, it's going to slow down any lake effect banding in western New York, because that whole evaporation system is going to be shut down with the ice cover. Interesting thing about the lakes is they're 51% iced right now, and usually in early March, the peak of icing, it's 51%. So they're way above normal with ice. And 2 years ago, only 13% of the lakes iced up. So quite a cold stretch we've been having here. Looking at the snow maps, the snow depth, snow risk, you can see there's a wide area of snow coverage over the northeast, but pretty meager as far as mid to late January, as far as the depths are concerned. Deepest snow in the Tug Hill Plateau and extreme northern New Hampshire and the mountains of western and northern Maine. We're up to 20 inches on the ground. Elsewhere, there's very shallow snow depth in the southern Hudson Valley, part of the Mohawk Valley, and part of even the Connecticut River Valley in Massachusetts and northern Connecticut has very thin snow cover, which of course leads to our snow water equivalent map. And the greatest depths, 4 to 8 inches, are in the Tug Hill Plateau, and extreme northern New Hampshire and northwestern Maine, 4 to 8 inches of water locked in the pack. Other than that, you can see the low areas of the Connecticut and Hudson River valleys, very little snow water equivalent. So since we last spoke, we have had these tremendous temperature swings. We had the 10-day mild spell, followed by the cold snap starting this past Monday. We've had some flooding in western New York into southern Vermont, basically because of the breakup ice jams. As I talked about, there was up to 31 different jams reported. The Arctic cold front went through Monday, and in eastern New England, southeastern New England, southern New York, we had a very cold snowstorm with 25 to 1 to 40 to 1 snow water equivalent in the snowfall, which was very uncommon here, especially for the coastal plain. So as I was saying, we have this widespread snow cover, although meager across the area. And as we talked about 2 weeks ago, the pattern of clippers, they keep clipping through the area, mostly moisture-starved, either passing through or just south of New England. And much of the region from the map here is trended either an inch above or an inch below normal, except a little bit more than that in coastal county of Plymouth County, Massachusetts. 2 weeks ago, as I said, we've had above normal temperatures near 60 with dew points near 60, and this past week we've been much below normal. And the past 90 days, we do have this departure from normal precipitation still showing up in southeastern New Hampshire through central Mass into most of Connecticut from the very dry late October and November. Well, we recovered nicely since then, December and January. But still in the 180-day, we have the same departure in nearly the same area of 2 to 4, occasionally 5 inches. And I'll show what this is showing on the drought monitor page in a few slides. Most of the rest of the area is very close to normal over the past 180 days. Stream flow conditions from the USGS maps indicate that we've really progressed since the fall. We're in the normal to slightly above normal range across much of the area. Of course, many of our gauges in northern central New York and New England are ice affected, even here in southern New England, plenty of ice affected gauges. Groundwater is also recovered nicely, mostly in the normal range with some sporadic below normal gauges across the Northeast. And of interest is 3 or 4 gauges in coastal Maine that are, from the warm-up have seen some infiltration to the groundwater where they're above normal for this time of year. Looking at the flow duration time series from Norwood, Massachusetts, with 72 years of record, because we've gone from this extreme below normal condition here, almost near the lowest 10th percentile and flow in the black line. With the several melts, we've gone slightly on the high end of normal. So it's indicative of the rivers and streams in southern New England have progressed to back to normal. Looking at the area's water supply and lakes, New York City water supply system, which is Ashokan, Croton, Gilboa dams, and the reservoirs of the Delaware system that are in New York. They're currently at 94%, much above normal of 80 to 81%. Quabbin Reservoir in Mass is operating normal. Situate Reservoir is 88% capacity, about 2 feet above where they should be this time of year, but still well below spillway, but they're okay. And Lake Champlain is running about 1.5 feet above normal, and during the warm spell, the lake rose almost 1.5 feet earlier in January due to that warm-up, which is pretty dramatic for the lake. As I was talking, we'd look at the drought monitor, and as of yesterday, there's still calling for this abnormally dry area because of a long-term precipitation deficit, southeast New Hampshire through central Mass into Connecticut. But conditions are warranting that they probably the next time around in 2 weeks, this map will not show any drought indices on it. As the CPC, Climate Prediction Center, has put out their seasonal drought outlook till the end of April, which they basically are going to remove the dryness or drought word from the seasonal outlook from the map. So we're in good shape here as we head this spring. Ron?
Okay, hi everybody. This is Ron Horwood. I'm the senior hydrometeorologist here at the Northeast River Forecast Center, and I'm going to talk to you about the near and a little bit long-term weather pattern heading out a few weeks or longer. The slide on the left shows the QPF forecast I produced this morning, valid through Sunday morning. What we're going to see is yet another very strong Arctic cold front swinging through the region, entering western New York State tomorrow morning and then passing east of New England by early Sunday morning. And there'll be widespread snow showers and squalls with that, except across Cape Cod and maybe down East Maine, where it actually might warm up enough for a little rain at the onset of this precipitation. But in the near term, next 48 hours, the bulk of the precip will be in western and central New York and also over down East Maine as the system gathers a little energy as it hits the eastern seaboard. The slide on the right is the weekly precip over the next week, and basically heaviest again right around Lake Ontario, which Ed had mentioned is still largely unfrozen because it's so deep. We'll see some good lake effect snow in that area. And then also down east could exceed an inch of melted equivalent QPF over the next week. The North Atlantic Oscillation, NAO, and the Pacific North America pattern, PNA. On the left is the NAO. We've seen it trending basically neutral to positive most of this winter, and usually in that type of pattern we don't see a lot of Arctic air spill into the northeast United States because this favors a very fast-moving jet stream. However, this year the jet has been a little further south, so that has allowed the cold air that's usually in Canada getting shunted east to make some inroads into New England before it gets shunted east. On the right is the PNA, and this is really key over the month of January. We can see a marked and abrupt turn from near neutral conditions to positive PNA in the early to mid part of January. And with a positive PNA, you favor a deep trough in the eastern United States. So that has really allowed this latest Arctic outbreak to take hold. Interestingly, as we look out toward the beginning of February, we see a lot of signs that finally the cold may ease as we get into the beginning of February, as the PNA goes back to neutral or maybe even negative, which would favor ridging in the southeastern United States and a more southwesterly flow in this part of the country. So the warm air may be trying to get back as we head into February. But until then, the latest outlooks from the Climate Prediction Center basically has us at below to much below normal temperatures through the end of January, and with precipitation relatively near normal. It looks like the heaviest precip will definitely be out to the west of our service area. This is the surface map for late tomorrow afternoon. You can see low pressure is just northwest of Montreal, and it's dragging an Arctic cold front south, which is coming through New England at that time. This is basically, looks kind of like the QPF image I showed you initially, where as the cold front approaches the warmer waters of the Atlantic, it's going to gather some moisture and dump a little heavier precip over down East Maine. But behind this Arctic cold front, another surge of very cold air. And we'll see that on this next slide, which is the 500 millibar chart, which is basically the jet stream level. And what you see here is basically a piece of the polar vortex has come south into the southern Canada, and jet stream, which comes down from Canada into the southern United States and then loops back to the northeast off the coast. This is going to drive in that Arctic air. Interestingly enough, you can see with this big polar vortex over southeast Canada, if you look over toward Alaska, a real giant ridge has formed in that area, and that's common when it's cold in the northeast. A lot of times it's warm in Alaska, and right before I came in, I checked the observations, and it's raining about 150 miles inland in southeast Alaska to the north of Anchorage, which is pretty uncommon for this time of year. Meanwhile, at the same time in Messina, it was 16 below zero. So the atmosphere is pretty wound up this time of year. We threw this in just for kicks. This is, of course, the Super Bowl, which is this year in a cold spot in the Meadowlands in New Jersey, and some of our models are trying to develop some type of system and squeeze it off the mid-Atlantic coast, bringing perhaps a chance of rain or snow to the Super Bowl site a week from Sunday. So that's just for a little bit of interest. We decided to throw that in. And this is the corresponding 500 millibar chart for Sunday, February 2nd as well. And what you do see is a definite relaxation in the in the jet stream and a more zonal type flow. So this is indicative of what I was saying. The temperature should moderate as we head into early February. So the forecast and outlooks, in the near term, you can see from our observed and forecast river conditions, we don't have any forecast flooding right now, but what's interesting is, like Ed was talking about, the magnitude of river ice all the way to the south coast of New England is very impressive for this time of year. And in general, the ice thicknesses across northern Maine, where the ice hasn't broken up at all this winter, is closing in on 2-foot thicknesses up there on the most northern Maine rivers. So this has been and will continue to be a big ice year, it looks like. The significant river flood outlook: with the cold, no significant river flooding is expected over the next 5 days. And the spring flood potential outlook: the near term, of course, is below normal, and even going forward, with the low snow water equivalents right now, since we melted so much of our snow and had a bit of flooding already, unless we significantly build the snowpack, we'll see just normal to below normal flood conditions. This doesn't address the ice jam issues, though, which could still be very significant as we head out of this winter. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Ed. He has a couple more quick slides to describe.
This is an experimental slide that the river forecast centers are using throughout the nation. And what you're looking at here is probability to exceed exceedance of a flood for the next 90 days and through late March. Of course, we don't melt out a lot of the north until April. What we're looking at here is a 25% exceedance flood, showing a couple areas possibly into minor flooding. But we'll be refining this next week and as we go through the season. And as we said, February 7th is the next call, 11 a.m. We do these every 2 weeks, and the week we do the calls, of course, we have the week of snow surveys done across the Northeast. And thank you, Maureen, for the picture of the ice here, and any questions or comments? Well, it sounds like we don't have any questions or comments. Is anybody there? Jim, are you out there?
Yeah, I'm here. Nice briefing. Thank you.
Okay, pretty cold and locked up for basically 2 weeks.
Not ready.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.